I am a sophomore at a community college in central Iowa. This story takes place in the fall of 2021, the first semester that everyone was back on campus for classes. Due to the odd classes I needed to take for my program, I needed to take a night class. This class took place from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Tuesday on campus. Obviously, I was not a huge fan of this, but since I was so close to the end of my years as a student, I sucked it up and went to this class every Tuesday night. Since this is a community college, there are so many questionable characters. Mostly normal people like myself, but some people with very abnormal personalities. There was a kid in my night class that was very off. He would walk into class with his bag and throw it down very hard in anger. He always had a hood up and kept a surgical mask on. I would never make eye contact with him, mostly because he was always looking down and because he sat right behind me. Again, this was the semester that basically everyone returned back to normal, and maybe this guy just wanted to get his credit and get out. After all, this is a night class, so I can't blame the guy for being upset. Most of the semester went as normal, with his creepy presence just being a burden. Until the last night class. We took our final test in person, and I saw the creepy guy finish first. Either he's pretty smart or just didn't care. I didn't care either way, as he stormed out of the class and slammed the door shut. As the night went on, more and more students finished their finals and went home. It was around 8:30 when I finished my final. Now the class would exit into a hallway that was right down the middle of the building. When everyone leaves, they go left because that parking lot is closer to the bigger town. When everyone leaves, they either go left because that's the parking lot that's closer to the bigger town, or they either live in the dorms. I go to the right and have noticed no one else has the whole semester. This is because the campus is in between two towns, one big town and one small town. I live in the small town, so I go to the parking lot with a lot less people in it. When I made my way outside, I turned to my left to head to the parking lot. My campus is set up to where one long, wide sidewalk cuts down the middle, with buildings on either side that have smaller sidewalks to lead up to them. I start walking on the smaller sidewalk to go to the bigger sidewalk. There were 2 more buildings to the left of the sidewalk, and then I would reach the parking lot. As I'm walking on the main sidewalk, someone starts walking on the smaller sidewalk of the building next to the one I had just left. I thought it was odd, so I looked over, and my stomach dropped. It was the kid in the hoodie. I was a senior in high school in 2016. I used to play piano, and a lot of people would say I was pretty good at it. Anyways, I was going off to college soon, and I did have a job, but the fear of running out of money was very real for me. So I looked everywhere on Craigslist for job opportunities that I could pick up on the side. I got lucky enough to get a few replies on a couple of babysitting and housework jobs, but they were either when I already had plans or when I worked. Fortunately, I did get one reply for me to give a piano lesson on a Saturday when I had nothing going on. I contacted the parents of the 5-year-old and made plans for me to give a lesson that Saturday just for half an hour. Thankfully, they didn't live too far away, but they did live in the country, where the nearest neighbor was maybe half a mile away. I contacted the mom named Julia and was texting her back and forth about the lesson. She was telling me about how her mother just passed away, leaving Julia her grand piano, and she wants her son to start taking lessons. I eventually asked her if I could talk to her kid on FaceTime or just call them to get to know the kid. I did ask her pretty late at night, but I wasn't expecting to talk to the kid that late. Julia immediately became defensive about me asking to talk to her son and claiming she doesn't need a stalker, just a piano teacher, and that I can talk to him when I get to their house. Now, if I heard this from anyone else, I would immediately call the lesson off. But $70 for half an hour was something I couldn't pass on, so I dismissed it and just planned on going once, seeing how it went, and getting out of there with $70. That Saturday, I got to the house. Again, it was in the country, so I drove past one house on the way there and then pulled into a long driveway, probably about 50 yards. When I rang the doorbell, I heard some talking between a man and a woman, and then the door swung open with Julia answering the door. At first she seemed surprised, and then practically broke into this happy, cheerful character. She greeted me with an unnaturally large smile and let me in. The house looked fine, clean and tidy. I asked where Alex was, and she said she's in her room upstairs. I was immediately confused by this. I thought Alex was a boy. I didn't think too much about it because I didn't really know Alex, so I thought I was somehow wrong about Alex's gender. Julia said, "Follow me, the piano is in the basement." What? The basement? Why would somebody put their piano in the basement? A grand piano would be pretty hard to put in a basement, and Alex's room was upstairs, which would eliminate any logical reason for it being downstairs. Then again, my grandmother's grand piano is in her basement, so I was relieved at least to know that having a piano in the basement was normal. Julia opened the door to the basement and turned on the light to go down there. She opened it and then stood behind the door like someone would do if they were holding a heavy door open for you. But this was a wooden door and was light. Things didn't seem to add up in my head, but I just kept remembering in my head the $70. I almost walked into the doorway of the stairwell heading down the basement when I noticed two odd things. One, if Alex was in his or her room and Julia was holding the door, why was the light downstairs already on? And two, I saw the very faint shadow of a man shuffling on the wall at the end of the stairway. Now I knew what was happening. On the fly, I made up an excuse that wasn't good, but I had to try. I asked Julia how old the piano was and when the last time someone played it was. She said the last time someone played it was probably when she took piano lessons as a kid. I insisted that I tune the piano and that I had tools in my car to tune it. Julia's smile dropped into confusion, like when someone is calling their bluff, and tried slamming the door to push me down the stairs. I instinctively moved out of the way and ran down the hallway to the front door. I heard Julia scream, "Get him!" down the hall, and loud thuds from upstairs came down the stairs running in the same direction as I was down the hallway. I opened the door fast and took a chair to my left on the porch and knocked it over into the doorway so that my pursuer would trip and fall. Luckily, he did. It was a huge man, and I wasn't sure whether or not he was Julia's husband. But at that point, I didn't care. I got to my car and peeled it out of there. As I was flooring it down the long driveway, I looked in the back mirror and saw Julia, the man, and another man in the doorway looking at me escaping down the driveway. I was in shock while driving away, and when I got home, I looked at the Craigslist posting only to see it had been taken down. This story takes place in 2017, a time when I was an audio engineer for a television show. I was regularly swamped with days and days full of perfecting the sound for this television show, so stress was very present at the time. I was going through a rough time trying to find ways to deal with this stress, like hanging out with friends, working out, or finding new hobbies. Since I was still young and lived alone, I wanted to find an atmosphere that I couldn't obtain at home, therefore getting me out of the house. I watch a lot of podcasts, and one thing I noticed that they all claim to clear their head is reading. That was perfect, since it would relieve my stress as well as give me a good place to go full of books, the library. I found myself going to the local library 2 to 3 times a week, reading books about self-empowerment and becoming a better person. I have to say that I am kind of skeptical about how far things like self-help and all that can go, but at least it's an environment that feels welcoming and much better than drowning in the stress that swamps me on a regular basis. My city had made large investments into the library before I had started to frequent there, meaning that I had one of the nicest libraries known to man, or so I believe. The plethora of books combined with the numerous couches and chairs were the perfect formula for this type of therapeutic time in my life. One new thing that came along in the new renovations was the addition of fast Wi-Fi and 10 brand new Apple desktop computers for the use of anyone. I mostly avoided them, however, as my day job was literally staring at a computer screen for hours. It all felt like my day job was following me though, because one day the local university kids came in asking the librarian if they could download a DAW, digital audio workstation, for their schoolwork. The librarian, knowing nothing about what they were talking about, complied and let them download Adobe Audition and begin their work. These kids must either absolutely love the film they were making and sound design, or this project must have been due the next day because they were there for hours. You may be wondering why I stayed there for hours, but I didn't. I went in there in the morning and returned some books, only to find out during the day that I hadn't returned one sitting in my car. So when I returned to the library in the evening, I find the kids still there. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. While I was returning books, I thought, well, since I'm here, might as well check out some more. I combed through the stacks, finding 3 books that piqued my interest. While I was going to the desk to return them, I saw the 4 computers previously occupied by the 4 college students empty. At first I thought, hey, good for them. But that turned to, oh no, one of them left their hard drive in the computer. I understand the anxiety around not saving something to a hard drive and getting all your progress deleted, so I took it upon myself to save the project for this kid. What I assumed was right. They were working on some sort of film project for their class. I saved the project, and as a little joke, I'd leave a little something behind. Flashback to when I was in high school, and computers were becoming more and more popular in high school. We didn't have our own, and had to use desktops in our school library. I forgot to sign out of my Google account once, and the next time I signed in, I found a new document named Important Message. Inside was an 8-bit cat in a cupcake with a rainbow behind it with text on the bottom saying, "Don't forget to sign out next time," and a smiley face. I thought I'd do the same thing for this kid. I created a document and put the same thing in, but changed the message to, "Don't forget your hard drive next time." Giggling to myself, I was finding a place to put this document on the hard drive when I saw something eerie. It was a folder with a date on it, 10/31/17, Halloween. My curiosity got the better of me, and I opened this folder. When I opened the folder, I was greeted with 10 items, 2 image files, 4 MP4 files, and 4 WAV files. When I opened the images, the first one was of a tall man holding a sledgehammer in a dimly lit basement. It looked like one of the college kids trying to look badass, but the second one will haunt me forever. The face of a woman was in this file, but her eyes were wide open, and she was screaming and crying. She was also tilting to the left and flinching because of something to her right. I then opened the 4 videos, with the first 2 videos showing this man taunting the woman with his sledgehammer while she was on her knees and zip-tied. The woman was begging the man, saying things like, "Please, I didn't want to," and "I'll make it up to you." I didn't bother looking at the other 2 videos, as I could see on their thumbnails that the man swung and hit her, and the last one with blood all over its thumbnail. I instead opened the WAV files to just listen. The last 2 are the ones I opened, since I thought they just lined up with the videos, and I didn't have the guts to actually watch the last 2. I listened as the woman continued to beg for her life, and then the man swung at her. The impact will forever haunt me. The last video was as gruesome as you'd think it was, except for the end of the last video, when the man said something horrifying. "That's what you get for flunking me, Miss Robbins." All of that just because the kid failed? Regardless, I was shaking in my seat. I felt the adrenaline lift me up in my seat as I stared at my hands on the keyboard. I then snapped out of it and realized that I needed to get this to the police. That's when I looked up and saw one of the college kids looking at me in shock. We made eye contact for what felt like a day, but also half a second. He then proceeded to say, "Can I have that back?" I safely ejected the flash drive and handed it over to the student and said, "Yeah, I just saved your project under a new folder." By saying this, I thought maybe he would think all I did was see the folder named 103117 and didn't actually open it. He looked confused as I handed it over to him, but all I could think to do was get this interaction over with and leave to go to the authorities. Thankfully I did so, and the kid was arrested with practically the evidence being handed to the authorities. The scariest part was how calm and normal seeming this kid was. I would never expect him to be the slightest bit rude, but then again, most murderers are like that, and almost always get away with it, but not this one.